Welcome to the Unwritten Life podcast, where we share that your deepest pain can lead to your biggest gain, and that your story is still unwritten. Now introducing your host, Tim Sawhook.
Welcome to the show today, everybody. I'm very excited to have you back for another episode of the Unwritten Life podcast. As always, I am your host, Tim Sawhook, and I have a great episode to bring you guys today. First, let me thank you guys so much for such a great outpouring for our first episode of Season 2 featuring Candace Wilson. Her story was one of grief, and it was tough to hear at some certain points, but it sure did offer hope and encouragement for people, who are going through something like that and are really looking for that hope, that extra chance to make a difference on the other side of the pain. And Candace's story really highlighted that, and I couldn't be more happy that she was able to come on and share that story. So thank you guys for the great outpouring. The wonderful comments, and for people reaching out to Candace on Facebook. I know she appreciated it, and so do I. I would like to encourage you guys to still go out and maybe leave a review on iTunes if you're liking the show, and it helps to get in front of more people. Again, like I talked about in Season 1, this is never about getting my name out there, but getting the name of all these amazing people who are so courageous and vulnerable to share their stories and to get their stories out in front of other people, because they have an opportunity to make an impact. So if you guys can continue to rate the show, share it with friends, continue to have them download it, I know they would appreciate it, and so would I. So I don't want to keep you guys waiting. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, that we have an amazing episode for you today, and it's a first time for me. This is two people on the podcast. It's a mother and daughter, and they share kind of a joint story together. So it's interesting to hear their insight together. And what they really do is they do offer hope and encouragement for people who are going through what their story is about today. So without making you wait any further, here is my conversation with Tracey and Quinn Anlauf. Well, I'd like to welcome to the show today, Tracey and Quinn Anlauf. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Well, I'm really excited to have you on. One of our mutual friends, Marcy, had recommended you early on when I did my first season of the podcast, and she's talked about you, two of you, and saying, listen, they have an amazing story. You really need to get them on to share their story on the podcast. So I'm really excited that you guys are here today to do that. Are you guys ready to jump right in?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So what I ask all my guests at the very first question is Tracey, tell me what it was like a little bit before Quinn even arrived into this world. What was your life like?
Pretty busy. I've always liked to be active. Went to college for 4 years, graduated from the University of Pittsburgh. I met my husband prior to college. We actually went to high school together, but we didn't date. He really wasn't my type. He had a mullet. It wasn't my thing. So we met right after high school, and just dated for about 5 years and decided to get married. And then we really I don't remember even talking about children. I think we just knew that we were going to have kids.
Right.
We were both working, and then next thing you know, there I was. We were ready to have a kid, and I was like, okay, I guess this is going to happen. So,
so did you guys, you and your husband, did you guys come from big families?
No, I have one older sister, and he has a younger sister, so pretty small families on both ends. I have like a lot of cousins on my side, same as his, but just small siblings, yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't like family wasn't the first thing after getting married, like, oh, we're going to have babies. We will multiply this earth and we will take over. No?
No. Not at all. Like, I don't even think I remember being a teenager and thinking about wanting to have children.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't ever really it's so strange. Don't ever really remember having that conversation with him.
Right.
And then I guess it was just like a natural, just kind of happened. I'm like, all right, I guess this thing's happening for us. But yeah, it's never really, even when I told my parents that we were having a baby, they were like, are you kidding me? Really? Having children? Yeah.
So nobody saw that coming at all, huh?
No, not at all.
How long were you guys married before you got pregnant?
2 years.
So you were married for 2 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what was your pregnancy like?
It was different. I mean, I've obviously never pregnant before, but I just remember a lot of oddness going on. I was really thin, and I had put on about 80 pounds with her. And
way to go, Quinn.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Thanks, Quinn. And I didn't quite understand why I was eating the way I was. I was just always craving sugar. I was a real strict vegetarian.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember telling my husband, I'm like, hey, I really could go for an Italian hoagie. He's like, oh, it's like all the meats together. I'm like, I know. For some reason, during my pregnancy with her, I just really craved fat, like fatty foods, like milk. I would just drink chocolate milk and meats and just butter. Like it was just really odd. And I was very health conscious. I exercised every day. Back in the day, I would rollerblade.
Nice.
CD player on my little fanny pack.
Do we have any pictures of that we can add to the show notes of you on rollerblades?
I don't think so. But I was good. I could even do crossovers. That's how good I was.
Oh,
but
and, the listeners want to know what that looks like. So if you dig anything up like that, we'll definitely put those onto the show notes.
Maybe I can recreate it. I'll recreate it.
Oh, that would be perfect. If you and Quinn can do that, we'll make it into an Unwritten Life podcast calendar. You guys can be January. So getting back into your story, you're pregnant, you're craving all the food. Actually, the food that you're craving sounds really good right now. All the chocolate milk and butter and meats. I think the people listening right now are going to get really hungry and
I'm sure
not understand why. It's because of you guys.
Yeah. But I mean, it was just weird. And then the weight gain, the weight I was putting on was just pretty intense. And then, my doctor got to the point, I'm like, I can't stop gaining weight. She's like, well, why stop now? I mean, you already hit a number. That's pretty interesting. I'm like, oh my goodness. So then, just the whole pregnancy was just fine. I mean, she was fine. I was never sick with her. Never anything weird, just really unique food cravings. And then next thing I know, I remember going into the hospital. My husband back in the day works in sports, and he had a beeper. This is back in the day.
Yeah, that is back in the day.
I remember paging him and him calling back finally. He's like, well, I'm in the middle of doing a football game right now. Do you really need me there right now? I'm like, I don't know. I guess. I don't know if I do or not. So finally he came, and it took a long time. I mean, I was in labor with her for quite some time. And the labor itself wasn't as nice as I thought it was going to be. I had a whole bunch of friends who were pregnant at the same time I was. And they had these wonderful stories about like everybody was there and visiting. And I didn't have that. My epidural didn't work.
Oh, great.
I think they went through, like, if that's even a terminology, through the spine.
Oh,
and so it wasn't working. And so I was feeling pain on one side, but numb on the other. And then she passed her vials inside of me. So then they had to run another IV to flush me out. I'm like, this isn't what I thought it was. This isn't how they do it on TV. This kind of stinks. So, and then I had her very quickly. She was so tiny. And like that was really weird for me because putting that much weight on,
right?
I'm like, I'm going to have a 60-pound baby and I can lose all this weight. And she was only 6'12".
6'12".
6'12", tiny little thing, 18 inches long. I mean, when I say this, I don't just because she's my daughter. Like, honestly, the most beautiful baby ever. I mean, like, honest to God. And I can say that because I have another one who he was so ugly. Yeah, I remember going to see him, and he looked like a bird. Yeah,
I remember. I said I could edit things out, but come on, people. There's a chance he may listen to this podcast, right?
He knows.
All right. He knows that he was hideous. Okay.
He knows he was hideous, and he knows because he saw the picture, and he himself went, ooh.
So, Tracey, what was it like the first time you got to hold her?
They took her away because because of the meconium, of course, it's in her lungs now. So they took her away, and they suctioned her out for a long time.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean meconium bile. So what happens is she pooped inside of me. And so that means all her, feces was floating around in the water, getting in her lungs, getting in her nose, which can cause, it could cause death. I mean, it's very severe and serious when that happens, and it happens frequently, but, we didn't know she was having any health issues prior to this, so they were just doing proper procedures.
Right.
So it was about, they wouldn't let her breathe. So they took her over, they didn't let her breathe, and they tried to clean her out. And of course, because she's so darn stubborn, she screamed. So they're like the suctioner. And I'm like, what is going on? So they cleaned her out the best they could, and they brought her over to me.
So what did you think was going on? What were you feeling when you were hearing her kind of scream and they were yelling about suctioning? What was going through your mind at that point?
For some reason, I don't know why, but I'm not a nurse, but I know so much stuff that I shouldn't know. Mm-hmm. So I kind of knew what was going on.
Oh, okay.
And I was pretty calm. My husband was bouncing around. He was very nervous. Mm-hmm. But, I knew why they weren't going to let her do that because of the bile and mm-hmm. Causing infections and things like that. But, when she did cry sooner, I was like, oh, no. But, it was fine.
Yeah.
That wasn't any reasoning like that. But, she was just under stress inside of me. And
right.
something was wrong, and that's why she did that. And, when they finally brought her over to me and holding her, like I was exhausted, of course. And,
right.
But just so tiny and so cute, and they're like, it's a girl. And I swore it was going to be a boy. I never thought I'd have a girl. I thought I'd have all boys. And I remember like looking at her and my husband and I were like, okay. And they're like, what's her name? And I said, Quinn. And her middle name is Van Kirk. And the lady's like, that's so aristocratic. and looking at her, and she's always been a lady. And I know that sounds weird to say, but Quinn has always been proper. And even as a newborn, she just laid there and she didn't even cry. She just like looked around and just an automatic, like born into this world again as like
right.
a proper lady at the wrong time period.
Well, for our listeners, Quinn right now is sipping tea with the pinky out. And she has this big flowery hat on, so that does sound about right. So I'm glad you cleared that up. I was really confused about what was going on, but thanks for clearing that up.
Too bad Prince Harry's taken.
Yeah, too bad. There, maybe hold out hope. So she's born. They cleaned her out. You finally get a chance to hold her, you and your husband, and you found out she's a girl. So you guys were really excited at that point?
Yeah, super duper excited. Never thought I'd have a girl. Had her, I don't remember really discussing girls' names. I knew it was always going to be Quinn, but we thought it was going to be a boy. So it was going to be Mason. And, I like the name Mason. Any Mason listeners out there, but it's not. But yeah, it was just really exciting. And the grandparents came in and my sister was there and they're all hanging out at the door, mm-hmm. waiting, listening because, my sister, same situation, had great births except for me. And she's like, what is going on in there? And you're like, why is everything starting to be so difficult and dramatic for you? I'm like, I don't know. But just pure joy.
Right.
Even now I can hold her in my arms. Pure joy.
That's the same look that she's having on her face is pure joy. That she's being held by her mom here on the podcast. So how does as she's born, you're at the hospital, how does the story start to evolve a little bit?
Sure. So as we're holding her, the pediatrician comes and checks her out and says to us, there was something odd that happened, and I said, oh yeah, she went to the bathroom inside of me. Mm-hmm. And they're like, yeah, but when she did go to the bathroom, she pushed out, like it was almost like a hard, oversized marble. And she didn't really specify at that time, like what that was, but it was a little problematic, but I didn't really think, because you're not thinking, I'm in pain. There's a bunch of weird things going on. And I'm like, okay, well, weird, but seems to be okay now. And she's like, yeah. And, as a doctor, I'm sure she had indications, but didn't want to scare me.
Right.
So what happened was, sounds like such a long story, but because the epidural didn't work, I had severe migraines in the hospital, and it was really hard for me to get up and to hold her. Like, I remember having like food on the tray and like, I'm like, can someone please push that tray over? I just can't get it. It was just really, really uncomfortable. And then they came back in and they took blood out of my arm and they gave me another epidural and stuck blood into the epidural to try to give me like a blood patch, the patch the hole up. And I don't know, I guess I'm not blaming anything, but I don't know. I don't remember if they told me I was supposed to stay still for 24 hours, but they let me go home, and I don't think it took. So I was basically like bedridden on the couch for like 4 or 5 days where I had double vision. It was a mess. They're trying to like take care of a newborn baby, and thank goodness we have such great, like my parents and his parents are great support, and they're both, very helpful. So they came over and helped. I remember my dad like making me dinner and and was feeding me. It was sweet, but they would just put her on my chest, and
Mm-hmm.
I would sit there and just hold her. And I got better over time, but she came home and some odd things happened to her when she was home before we even knew about her diagnosis.
Okay.
So we would feed her. I bottle fed her. She refused me. So she did not want to breastfeed. So she refused that. Thanks, Quinn. So hence the reason why I still had a hard time losing that weight. Anyway.
Well, this is kind of awkward right now.
Yeah, a little awkward. So I remember feeding her, and she would literally projectile vomit the entire bottle across the room. This little 6-pound baby throwing up across the room, and I'm like, she's so small, she's not keeping anything in. Maybe I'm overfeeding her.
Right.
Puke it back up. And so it was a little stressful trying to feed her. So I remember it's probably her third day before we even knew anything. We started finding things out about day 4 or 5, but I remember calling my mom and saying, if you don't get over here right now, I'm going to put her in the snow. And Mom's like, don't put her in the snow. I can't help myself. She's throwing everything up. We would feed her covered in towels because we knew we were going to have a volcano of
Well, I know what that's like. My son did that when he was a baby. If he would burp before, it was the most disgusting thing ever. And you'd be surprised how far a baby can shoot vomit across the room.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Nasty.
So you've come home from the hospital. You're really still reeling from the pregnancy and the delivery with the pain and the double vision stuff being down. And then on top of it, I know it's tough in those first few days because there's very little sleep going on, and you're trying to you're a brand new parent, so everything's new. So you're trying to figure out why she's not eating, why she's puking everything up, while you're trying to deal with your pain and just deal with life going on. Mm-hmm. What was it like after those first 3 days before? Thank God you didn't put Quinn in the snow, and she's okay. But what happened next with Quinn?
So what happened next is we got a call from the pediatrician, and I remember Brian and I were both just laying in bed, and she was in the bassinet next to us, and the phone rang, and it said, the pediatrician. I'm like, well, I don't know why they're calling me. I didn't even have a pediatrician picked. Things back, I'm telling you, back in 99, things were different than they are now. The pediatrician walked in, it was meant to be, and she was a pediatrician at the hospital, and I loved her. But they called, and she's like, we need to see you and the baby as soon as possible. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, so, just come in in the next hour and, whatever. We're like, okay. So I said to Brian, I'm like, hey, they want us to come in with the baby right away. He's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know you don't know what questions to ask. You're just like, okay, I'll be there.
Did it scare you?
It scared me a lot because the first thing I thought, what's wrong with her? Is she, have something, what is wrong with her?
Right.
Something that's going to be physical. Is it mental? I had no idea because, you're a new parent. You just, you're scared enough of having a baby and dropping it a couple times. Sorry. But let alone something wrong. And I remember trying to go, because I still have double vision. I remember trying to put makeup on. I don't know why you put makeup on when you have an emergency. I'm trying to put mascara on. I'm like, I don't know. So Brian and I grabbed the baby and we left. We didn't even bring a diaper bag. That's how new parents we were. We didn't even know. We're just get the baby. Let's go.
Get the baby and go. Right.
No diapers, nothing. We go to the pediatrician with just this baby in a car seat. And I remember sitting in the waiting room, and the doctor came out and brought us in and sat us down. And she's like, so does anybody in your family have cystic fibrosis? Mm-hmm. And I remember the first word was swore. I said the F word, but I was like, shit, Mm-hmm. And Brian really didn't know much about it. And the only reason why I knew about it is because when I was pregnant, I watched a documentary on it. And I remember watching TV about it and be like, oh, that really sucks. That's horrible.
Right.
And next thing you know, I'm living this documentary, And I remember sitting there and her telling us, and it just seemed like I was trying to listen. Right. But it was just seems like it was just going in one ear and going out the other. And all I can hear was cystic fibrosis. And she's like, I made an appointment for you guys to take her down to Children's Hospital tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay.
Right.
Where's that? What's that? Where's that at? And so we had to go home, and we had to tell our parents. And that was probably one of the hardest things to do because both of our parents are nurses.
Okay.
And always like worst case scenario.
Sure. Yeah, I have a sister who's a nurse, and it's always like she'll give it to you just raw. It's never like sugar coated, and it's always, the tough scenarios. Let me go back a couple steps. So you guys are there at the hospital or the pediatrician's office, and you get this news, and like you said, you're kind of just reeling. You're already cussing, and like, what is going on? I've seen a documentary about this. Now I'm living it. Mm-hmm. They told you had an appointment. What was that ride like on the way home with you and your husband?
Quiet. I remember it being very, very quiet. I remember him just saying, like, what is it? And I said, this is what I saw that it was. And I said, and it's not good. Mm-hmm. We just got really quiet on the way home.
Well, let me ask you a question. Can you describe for people listening, what is cystic fibrosis for people who are not really sure? They've heard about it, but they really don't know.
We're laughing because Quinn has the hardest time defining what cystic fibrosis is. That's comical. Cystic fibrosis is a genetic disease. Mm-hmm. Both parents need to be a carrier, which my husband and I both are, and we created Quinn. And what cystic fibrosis is, it's when your body doesn't produces too much mucus, and you are missing some proteins that move that salt around in your body that allows your body to get rid of the mucus, right? Mm-hmm. And so what happens is that the mucus sticks. It's sticky. It's like fly paper. Mm-hmm. So picture putting up fly paper catching flies. That's what her lung does with bacteria.
Okay.
As well as the mucus affects everything. It affects your stomach. It affects your reproductive system. It affects males more than the females do. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And it also is a enzyme issue with her liver, and her body does not break down fats or proteins.
Okay.
Her body does not break down fats or proteins, so she needs to take pills every day to make sure that she's absorbing fats and proteins in her food.
Okay.
That goes back to her bowel. Like what happened with her bowel is that her body mm-hmm. put up that blockage because her body was all that fat I was eating.
Right.
It was absorbing. It was causing her to not be able to function in that area.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you for explaining that, because I know a lot of people know the term, they know what it is, but they really maybe not know the details of it. So I want to kind of lay that groundwork early on as we go on in the story a little bit. So like you said, the ride home is really quiet. You're probably not talking much. You're probably just digesting it in your head, each other. I could see that. Mm-hmm. And then you get home and you have to make those phone calls.
We had to make those phone calls.
What was that like?
We decided to have them over, and we told them that we got the baby pictures in and we wanted them to look at them because we didn't want they're like, okay. But I guess on the back end, my mother and mother-in-law were calling each other and be like, something's wrong. Why would she want us to come over and look at pictures? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of funny to hear the backstory of it.
Right.
And I do remember at the pediatrician's office too, I remember her telling her, but both my parents were nurses. And she was so sweet, Dr. Ziada. And she said, would you like me to come to your home tonight and talk to them about it? Like, what pediatrician does that?
No, that's amazing.
She's been amazing. Isn't she amazing? Mm-hmm. We love Dr. Ziada. She's absolutely amazing. She's been in our lives since day one with her, so 19 years, and she's a great person. But they came over that night, and we did have baby pictures, luckily, and they sat down there looking at them. And so I said, and of course it's me. My husband's very quiet about things, mm-hmm. and I said to them, I said, we need to talk to you guys about something. And they're like, okay, what's going on? And I told them, and they both started crying because they knew what CF was, mm-hmm. but not what it is now.
Right.
And they were only thinking about like CF in the 70s where life expectancy was 7 or 11. And you really didn't have that potential to see a teenager sitting next to you, a college student, a bride, mm-hmm. All that stuff that is happening now.
Right.
So quite devastating for them. Yeah.
So after you told them the news, what was your next step in your plan? The next step was the hospital appointment?
Yeah, the next step was to jump in the car
mm-hmm.
the next day and go to Children's Hospital. I was still suffering from the after effects of everything, so it was a little rough on me. But we went down to Children's Hospital, and we met a couple doctors. And the one doctor we met, I remember him, holding Quinn, and I had just fed her a bottle, and he's like, this is how you burp a baby. And I'm like, okay. And he burped her, and she puked all over his shoes. And I remember Brian, I'm like, that's not our doctor. I don't want him.
Mm-hmm.
And then we met Dr. Ornstein, and he was amazing. Like, he just made us feel so good about everything and all the things that were coming up in the future. And
right.
Don't worry, we got this. This is no big deal. We're going to handle this. And I remember watching videos and sitting there, and Brian and I are like, where are we? Like, is this real? Like, we're watching these videos and these books and giving us all this information. I'm like, I don't even know how to, like, barely take care of this thing, let alone read all these books about it, right? So, and I remember them showing us and sitting there, and they're like, you need to do chest percussion therapy on her. And I'm like, what is that? And they gave us this little, remember that little blue cup?
Yeah.
This little blue cup, and they showed us all these different positions that we would have to hold her and just pound on her lobes of her lungs to loosen up mucus, because she was so small.
Right.
And so they showed us videos and practiced with us and sent us books, and oh my gosh, it was like a 6-hour appointment, and it was just so overwhelming. And I just remember the exhaustion, but we did remember a diaper bag.
That's good. You guys were making strides as parents at that point. So during that 6-hour appointment, you had that first guy at first, and then you had the doctor that who came alongside of you. How important was it to have somebody come alongside you in that moment, be very positive, and kind of speak some truth into you guys at that moment that things would be okay? Thinking back, how important was that?
Amazing. I mean, it was so important to know that we were in the right place at the right time, and that somebody was there who we say literally wrote the book on the disease, wrote the book. He did. And to have him as our doctor, and for him to allow us to let him be our doctor. He was pretty full. I mean, he had a full load of patients, and, and we said, we want you to be our doctor. And he's like, well, I got a lot of patients. He goes, but I'll be your doctor.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So just, to have such a tragic experience, but have such good 2 experiences with Dr. Zeta and Dr. Ornstein. And they work well together too at the time too. They would always communicate to each other. It was very relieving.
Good. So after your big 6-hour marathon appointment, all these videos, learning all these things, I mean, it's tough enough being a new parent, but a new parent with a child that has some sort of disability or sickness or something that you have to cope with on a daily basis. What were the next week or weeks like after that?
It was very trying. Doing the chest percussion therapy was tough. We had to give her pills. So picture as a 6-month-old trying to shove pills down her, or 6-day-old trying to shove pills down her throat.
Oh, no.
We had to open up the pills and put little beads in her mouth. So your little crayons have beads in them. So we'd have to put 3 beads in your mouth, and then we'd have to make sure they're down so she wouldn't get thrush or anything like that.
Right.
And then she would throw up the beads, and then next thing I know, I'm digging through the puke to see how many, the things I did for you. Digging for her puke to see, digging through her poop to see if she's digesting them. Like, all I did was dig in your disgustingness. But
if you guys could see this looks they're giving each other at this moment, it is priceless.
But just having to give those pills to her, and then with the formula, we started having to put real thick cereal in it so that it would stay down, because I forget what it's called, laryngeal dysphagia. I made that up. It's something like that. But it's when her vocal cord was extra floppy. And I'm like, seriously, Quinn, can't you just be normal, right? So she's throwing up this food. We're giving her Prevacid for acid reflux to try to keep the food down. But trying to feed a 6-day-old baby thick formula, as thick as ketchup, was very stressful, because now she's choking on it. Now I can't get the cereal out of the bottle nipple because it's too small. So, we had to come up with these ideas of putting like a toothpick in it to keep it larger, cut little scissors in it. It was just very trying.
Right.
And then we would have to do chest percussion therapy, and we're exhausted.
How often did you have to do that during the day?
We would do it 3 times a day, and it would take about a half an hour. So morning, afternoon, evening. So we would pound on her chest with this little thing. We were in different positions. She'd throw up because of the positions. And I was so exhausted. I swear I remember sitting there half asleep, pounding her head. So instead of like pounding like I was supposed to be like pound, 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 next thing I'm like, oh my gosh, she's in the head 10 times. She's like just sitting. Thank God she was so good, because I hear so many stories of people with babies and infants that are running all over, chasing them to try to do, and she would just sit there. Like
Good job, Quinn.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it was very stressful.
Right.
My mother and my mother-in-law would come over and give me breaks and let me just, relax a little bit when they come do therapy.
Sure.
And all that.
So just connecting with what our listeners connect with is part of the story and the struggle part of it, and then there's some funny parts about going through the puke and stuff like that you're joking about. But being that new parent for you and your husband, what was like the most trying times like that you were thinking through in your head that early on, where you're having to do that 3 times a day, pounding on their poor little chest and the medicine and the sickness? What was the most mentally trying and stuff for you guys at that moment?
I think that my husband traveled a lot, still does. And I felt like a lot of times that I was just kind of on my own, just exhausted and tired. And he'd be out long nights and coming home like, just, you do it. You take her, you do it. Just trying to split up the responsibility as much as we can. And I think another trying part was, a lot of my friends didn't understand. They were like, some of them kind of got real distant with me, and I really didn't talk to them that much anymore because they just were scared or didn't know what to expect. And which is fine. I completely understand, but just come and ask questions. Don't be afraid of, it's not contagious. That's when you need somebody the most, is when you need your friends and your family. So that's a nice way of weeding out who maybe you really didn't really need in your life, I guess.
That could be. And we've had this kind of same conversation come up on different podcasts related to someone who had lost a child or somebody who had lost a spouse, where they did start to feel some isolation because a lot of people, they just don't know what to say. They don't know if they should approach, should they bring it up, do you want to talk about it? So give me just a couple tips for people. Like, what's the right permission, right language to approach somebody in your situation like you were then?
I think the best thing would just say to somebody, what can I do to help? I might not be understand what's going on, but I don't want you to be under pressure or under stress. And anything that I can do to help you, whether if it's run to the grocery store or run to the pharmacy to pick up medicine, just to be there for them, or just to bring them something, like bring them a coffee and sit down and just have a conversation and ask questions. I think the biggest thing is not to be afraid to ask some questions. Okay. So
so you don't have that isolation, so you don't feel so alone. You're already tired and feel exhausted, but to feel alone, because, I'm sure as being a young mom and you have a young baby, you do look around and see all the people who are quote unquote normal babies, the normal pregnancies, and wonder, why me? Why is my child like this? Did you have moments like that?
Yeah, definitely. I remember one of my biggest moments was New Year's Eve. It was 1999 going into 2000. When everybody was scared. Everybody was scared that, save the water, the computers are going to go out. I remember laying on the couch by myself. My husband bought this really expensive bottle of champagne, and I just didn't want to leave the couch. He actually sat on the front porch with our Shih Tzu, and they shared it. I remember laying on the couch with her in the car seat down below, and every time a new country turned New Year's, I bawled each time.
Oh,
and
wow.
I just remember like feeling, I don't know, like a new year was so stressful. Like, is this going to, what's this next year going to be like? And so forth. So I remember just feeling lonely and sad. Yeah.
That's tough early on, especially wondering those kind of things. What was things going to be like? I want to go back to stuff you talked about with expectancies. When they talked about cystic fibrosis in the 70s, talking about, capping out at 7, 11 years old. Did they early on talk to you like, listen, she may only grow and live to a certain age? Did they tell you anything like that early on?
No. In order for us to have this disease, to say this is odd, but this is the best possible time to ever have something like this. Things were happening, and there was a lot of studies being done when she was born. And I remember Dr. Ornstein saying to me, he's like, I just want to let you know that there will be a cure in her lifetime.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so, that gave us a lot of hope. And, whether that lifetime is at like 40, 50 or what have you, it's our job and her job to stay as healthy as she can for when that does happen, that she's ready.
She's ready.
Right.
So hearing that early on, I mean, how awesome, like I said, you had that guy come along you early on to be positive like that. But the whole point of this podcast is to offer hope and just have someone like that very early on, when you have people around you that talk to you about stories of fear and things like that, really give you that hope. That must have been an amazing feeling at that point.
It is. And looking back now, you don't realize those important factors and how much people really made a difference in your life,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just nice to reflect and just truly look back and say, wow, that person made a difference, or that person just made my day that day because of coming to see us when we were in the hospital, or, making us rigatoni one day. Like, it's just amazing that people are truly out there to help and to be, just to be there for you.
That's awesome. So we'll fast forward just a little bit, unless there's something I'm missing out on. But what was it like as she started to get a little bit older year by year?
So when she started to we were still, doing hand therapy and all that stuff, but very protective of her. I remember being in the mall and she was in a stroller and a woman came up and touched her, and I yelled at the woman. I said, "You don't touch people's babies and you don't touch my baby." And I felt, now I'm like, gosh, but Quinn knows me. She knows I'd be like, "Get out of my baby's face." But, we had some play dates. We had some friends, but I was very particular. Her best friend in the entire world is my niece, Avery.
Okay.
And Avery would come over, and Avery was always sick. She was the sickest kid. She's like, "Why are you always so sick?" And they would come over and spend the weekend. And I remember my sister watched me through the door, and she's like, "Did you really just go get Lysol?" I'm like, "Yeah, I spray the whole house down when people leave." So it was just really particular in that fact. But, it was time to really consider what we were going to do with her. Did I want to homeschool her?
Mm-hmm.
Do you imagine? No. So we decided just to treat her as normal. I did quit my job. I didn't want her in daycare.
Right.
Did we have the luxury to do that? No. Did we make that decision? Yeah. We really had to make some sacrifices. But, I'm like, I want to put her in preschool. And so we put her into a preschool program, and, we had conversations with the teachers about this, what needed to be done. So preschool went really smooth. I was very happy with it. You loved it, little chum. Some great friends. Saw her be social, still afraid of the Easter Bunny, still afraid of Santa Claus, all that good stuff.
Well, there's adults who are scared of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. So
Santa's fine. The Easter Bunny just really, I still don't like it.
The Easter Bunny can be a little creepy. Let me ask you a question, Quinn. So what's your earliest memory growing up and knowing that maybe you were a little bit different than everybody else?
I remember going to preschool. You'd always have snack time, and then teachers would always have to pull me over and give me pills, and kids would always look over.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of my earliest memories, was being pulled aside, which still happens. I get pulled aside and still get asked things. But yeah, that was one of my earliest memories.
So with those early memories, how did that impact you socially or mentally?
It definitely made me feel different, there was something wrong with me, but and I was lucky enough to find people in my life, friends and even preschool, who didn't make me feel different at all, just it was totally normal what I had to do.
That's awesome. That's good you have somebody. So what tip could you give to people? Because your mom felt isolated early on when you were a baby. You could start to feel a little isolated with people. What tips would you give to other people to come to approach someone like yourself in a situation like that, or anybody that seems a little different?
No, I guess just the same thing, ask questions. Even though I have a terrible time explaining it, I'm really awful at it. Just ask questions and don't be afraid to, it's just, it is what it is. So.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, good. No, that's a good answer. So your mom said you're horrible explaining it. You say you're horrible explaining it. So we got to hear your definition of cystic fibrosis. This is your 30-second elevator pitch. Someone's like, "Oh, you have cystic fibrosis. What is that?"
Oh, it's so bad.
So there was this girl who I was in school with, and we never really talked, but we did the same activities. We were both in theater, and the theater group was going to Disney, and she came up to me and she asked me if she could walk around with my group at Disney, and I was like, yeah, sure. we'll be fine. And then we were talking. She's like, you have cystic fibrosis, right? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, well, what is it? And I was like, I sweat salt. And she was like, what? And I was like, I don't know. And then my friend Megan is like super smart. And I looked at Megan. I was like, can you just please tell her like what it is? I don't know.
So your tip would be to surround yourself with really smart friends.
Yes.
If you can't speak for yourself about your issues, they can help you out.
Yes.
All right. That's a good tip, I think, for anybody in life. With you, Quinn, I'll come back to you again. Growing up, was there ever a point where you were like, why me also? When it was something that was just kind of tough? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely in like middle school and like early on in high school. I wanted to be like everybody else, and I didn't want to have to wake up early and do a treatment, and I wanted to just be able to stay out at night with my friends and not have to worry about coming home and sitting there for half an hour plugged up to a machine. So I kind of pushed it away. Like I really didn't take care of myself at all, and it came back to bite me in the butt a little bit.
Well, let's take a step back. So when you said that you didn't take care of yourself at all and it came back to hurt you, what was something you weren't doing that you should have been doing?
Everything. I didn't do anything.
Like what? Give me one or two. Maybe your mom can help out too.
I didn't take my pills.
She'd hide them.
I'd hide them. I'd flush them. I wouldn't do my chest. When I got older, they didn't need to like pound me anymore. I got a vest that would do it for me, and I would just run the machine, and I wouldn't hook up to it at all.
And I knew.
Yeah, she knew.
I'm not dumb.
Right. Well, so how did that impact you then, Mom? That
Very stressful.
Because you spent your whole life doing everything you can, digging through her vomit and poop and everything else, just to keep her going. But to see her kind of really like self-inflict all these things on herself because she didn't really want to accept it. How was that for you?
It caused a lot of conflict in our house. It caused a lot of arguments. I'm like, that's what's going on right now. There's nothing, I can't literally force these things down her throat.
Right.
What do you want? What can we do? Well, you need to sit there and make sure she does it. Well, I'm back to work. Like I'm exhausted. I'm trying to fall asleep. I need to go to bed. I'm getting up at 5 a.m. to go to work. Right. So it added a lot of unnecessary stress. And, if I can give any advice out there to kids that have to do medicines, whether you're diabetic or MS or whatever you have, do what you need to do, because not only are you causing harm to yourself, you're causing additional stress in your family that doesn't need to be there on top of everything else.
Right. Okay. That's a good tip. So when you were going through that, Quinn, when you really just kind of wanted to be like everybody else, and nobody can blame anyone in that situation, when you are constantly being pulled aside and you can't stay out late and you have to take pill after pill and all these different treatments, when did that finally just implode upon you? Where like, I've got to get help. I've got to maintain myself and be healthy.
So the last month of my freshman year, I got put into the hospital, which I was never in. I was in when I was younger, like right when I was diagnosed was the last time I was in the hospital. So, the May of my freshman year, I was put in the hospital, and I had the whole PICC line in for medications, and I just kind of felt like such a burden at that point. Like my dad would have to come home, well, not even come home from work. He'd go from work straight to the hospital, and she'd have to leave the hospital super early in the morning to get to work. So I just felt like really bad that I did that to myself and did that to them. And then that's not even really got better, because I remember I got home from the hospital and I was just never broke the routine of just skipping my treatments. And my friend was having a bonfire, and my dad was like, yeah, you can go, but get your treatments done first. And I was like, okay, I will. And I didn't, and I told him I did. And the numbers haven't changed. They didn't track the numbers on my machine, and I didn't change. So he came, he picked me up, and
From the party.
Grabbed
her from the party.
Yeah.
Not good.
He's like, oh, that's bad. When the dad shows up and
was
removes
bad.
you from the party.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
To go back to her hospital visit real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
She's allergic to Bactrim. And, this kind of bit her in the butt too. So this is advice to anybody that she was allergic to Bactrim. And so they decided to reintroduce it to her slowly. So they put her in the intensive care unit just to watch her. She was the easiest ICU patient they've ever had. Matter of fact, you have to tell the story about looking out the window in a second. But they introduced it to her. They thought she was okay. They sent her home. So she still had IV. We had to do all the IVs at home. We were basically now her nurse. So we had to pump her with the medicine. We had to pump her with, I forget what that is, the blood clotting stuff. And then give her more antibiotics. So like now we're literally putting IVs in our own kid. It was terrifying. I'm like, there's a bubble, whatever. But
yeah, that'd be scary.
Yeah, it was just really very stressful. But it's, as a parent, it's what you got to do.
Right.
If this happened while she's in college, this is what she'd have to do. It's just a part of what it is. But, the key is what happened was she got reintroduced to the Bactrim, and it really messed up her immune system. And for 4 years now, she's been struggling with, you say it,
erythema nodosum, which is when, it's when, what is it? Like my joints my joints swell and I get really stiff and I have these like red bumpy welts all over my body and I just like have trouble moving and getting up and just.
It's agonizing.
Yeah.
So was all this a result of you not taking care of yourself for that period of time?
Yeah.
Not finishing the antibiotics she started. Like she would take, a 2-week dose, she would only take 7 days. And that hurts you. It makes your body reject those antibiotics. And with somebody with CF, you need those antibiotics. So now her body's like, listen, you didn't finish me the last 5 times. I'm not going to work for you this time.
Right.
So, any advice out there for anybody, finish your whole dose of antibiotics because it's going to hurt you in the future that your body's going to say that those don't work. And it really affects the immune system. And now her immune system is healing, but it was hurt.
It was hurt. So Quinn, how did that make you feel that you wanted to be normal like everybody else and you rejected the fact that you had cystic fibrosis and rejected the medication and stuff that put you in the position that you're in today? How did that make you feel?
Like an idiot. Like just really stupid. Like
Mom's nodding her head yes.
You can only have so many hard conversations with somebody.
Right.
And it's not equivalent to alcoholism or whatever, but you have to accept it and you have to know that there's a problem.
Right.
And she's seen that there was a problem, and we can talk about this too in the future, but she wants a family, she wants kids, and I said to her, and I think this is something that stuck with her too, I don't remember if it did or not, and I said to her, I'm like, go ahead and have kids. I said, but if you're not taking care of yourself now, you probably won't live long.
Right.
And I said, so who's going to be raising your children? Me.
Right.
Like, ew.
That's scary.
It's scary. And so, sometimes tough reality checks really have to be said. Things I never thought I'd ever have to say to my children, but it now triggers down to my son who doesn't have CF, and I'm pretty hard with him now too. And I take that as a great parenting tip is to lay it out there. It's not pretty.
No. Sometimes you have to have those tough talks. And especially it's a little tougher for you in your situation than normal kids who don't have this kind of thing. But one thing I can tell you, Quinn, and your mom's probably told you the same thing, is, the stuff that you went through that's the toughest, the lessons that you had to learn, those are what's going to define you as you get older. Those are the things that are going to help you help other people.
Yeah.
Because in our life, we always look at it as a A to B straight line, and nobody really anticipates the zigzags in life. And our zigzags is where we learn the most and gain the most strength. So your zigzags may be tough, and it must have been tough to go through, but I guarantee you it's going to help kick butt for other people in the future as you go stronger mentally and become a better friend and a better resource for other people.
Yeah, definitely.
So, absolutely. I think you're already awesome. So even your mom agrees. Even your mom thinks you're cool. Oh, jeez.
But does she think I'm cool?
We can talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll have a separate podcast about that. Is your mom cool? So after you dealt with all of that, and I know you're still dealing with the effects of that, how did the rest of your high school career pan out?
Well, you are talking to the 2018 Norwin Snowball Queen.
What?
I was a snowball queen my senior year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. No, it was tough having to wake up early, and I just had like zero motivation. I was like, in my head, I was like, it's one or the other. And I don't really know which one I chose. I didn't, like, it was either grades or health, and
She chose neither.
I chose neither.
Yeah, her end of sophomore year to junior year, she suffered from some depression and anxiety.
Right.
Yeah, and because then you have a reality that comes into you, like, oh my gosh, this is my life, and so we had to get that fixed. Fix the noggin a little bit, which is fine. But sometimes you just got to have everything in line as much as you can. I know the zigzags do
Right.
happen, like you said. But if you can just do your best to align those zigzags, and sometimes you got to get one thing fixed to help the other things too.
No, absolutely. Mental health is one of the biggest things we talk about on this podcast a lot because it affects everybody on one level or another. And it must have been tough, as you, Quinn, getting older and realizing, yes, this is my life. I will have these struggles, and new things may present themselves as I get older, and I want to have a family. What does that look like? And I think that coming on and talking about that and saying, I was depressed. I did have depression. I had anxiety over my future and what was going on that daily basis. Those are the things that people connect to. Those are the things that make people feel more normal, because I dealt with depression really bad. And you can go back and listen to my episode if you haven't listened to it, anybody out there. And it's very isolating and it's really scary. And it can really put you in a bad place going forward. So the fact that there is hope out there for people and to talk about it more, so people aren't so scared off by mental health and stuff like that, I think is really important. So thanks for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. So I hear that you're going to be going to college. Is that true?
Yeah, I leave in 15 days.
15 days. So how does that feel to you, Mom?
Good and bad. A little nerve-wracking because she's made some big changes in her life and transitions, but in my mind, is it a transition enough?
Right.
I feel like all my life, I don't know how many times a day I've said it, Quinn, but is your therapy done? Did you take your pills? Did you do your pills? Did you therapy? I feel like I've not done that as much lately, right? So I'm seeing that there is that sense of responsibility with her. I'm a little nervous because she's not going to be here for us to watch, but thank God there's FaceTime, and if I feel that she may be slipping on something, I'm going to have her FaceTime me when she does therapy, just to make sure that we're okay here for a little bit.
Right.
Making sure she's taking her pills and filling in her pill case.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're starting a new drug that's she has to take in the morning and at the night, and if she doesn't, it can really mess things up with insurance. Syndeca. So it's kind of like quote unquote the start of the cure. It's a pill that she'll be taking every day, twice a day, to help her body change and work the way it's supposed to work. It's
Okay.
put it in terms. And she has to take that pill in the morning, and she has to take that pill at night. And that's going to probably start right when she goes to college. So it's going to be a different transition there. And she has to eat it with fats, and she has to make sure she's doing this. So, Quinn has a lot of fear, but she has a lot more responsibility than other kids. Some other kids there have huge responsibilities too, so I'm not downplaying that at all. But, the key and I think what's really, really important to even go back to that mental health conversation is to have the right people around you.
Right.
I cannot have been more happier with the friends that she's had through high school. The most phenomenal group of girls that possibly could have, that literally have texted me and said she skipped her therapy tonight. She didn't do it. You better check her.
That's a high level of accountability right there.
Yeah, they very, very care. They really, really care about her. And she had to go away on this adventure. I call it adventure camp. She had to spend 5 days in a cabin. It was electricity, but tell them a little bit about how that was kind of like your first outing, like being with people that didn't know about your CF. So share that one. I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So when I got there, like, I obviously did not know anybody. They took our phones away. I didn't have my phone, so I was just thrown out of my comfort zone. And so I walked up there to one of the leaders, and, they had known before. I had talked to the camp before about, what I had to do with my treatments and stuff. And so we got there, and I didn't want to put my treatments in the room because
It's hard. The dog jumped ahead.
so I didn't want to have my treatments in the room because there were 10 girls in there. I didn't want to be like a nuisance to them with this loud machine. And
Right.
so I put it in the activities hall, like in the corner of the room, just completely alone. And then within the first couple hours, I met some people who now I talk to every single day. And they were like, I was walking to the activities hall, and they were like, where are you going? And I was like, oh, I just have to do a treatment. I was like, I have cystic fibrosis. And that was the first time I really brought it up. And they were like, they had no idea. And they were like, well, why don't you just bring yourself into the room? And so that made me feel really comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought in my stuff, and one girl was in the shower, and I explained it to the rest of them. And I started this machine, and it's a big machine with tubes and a vest, and they all hook up and shake. And the one girl like walked out of the bathroom like completely in shock. And I was like, oh, I missed one. Like let me just tell you what this is. But they were all kind of like amazed by it. They would all just like sit around by me and watch me do this treatment. They talk to me about it. And so now I like, it's like a new perspective. Like I just feel more comfortable with it. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's good. I mean, that's a great story that you went from like having no hide in this hall to them asking you to come back into the room, and then everybody they were captivated by you and your story, just like I am right now. So that is really cool that you had that experience with all these brand new people. So that must give you a little bit of an idea of maybe what's coming for college, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Quinn, then. So what do you see for your future? What are you looking forward to the most?
I think just being on my own and, I don't know, like taking responsibility for what I have to do eventually. She just surprised me with this yesterday. I said she's going to come down once a month and visit me with my pills, which I did not know was happening. Mm-hmm.
So I guess,
just being completely on my own at some point.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so what do you see as a career, something that you're interested in right now? Something you want to do?
I'm really looking into elementary education.
Okay.
I loved elementary school. I had like the absolute best teachers, and they like just made such a positive mark on my life that I want to be able to do the same thing. So
that's awesome. That's that's definitely a good career. That we need a lot of great teachers out there. And so, Tracey, how do you feel? What kind of hopes do you have for Quinn's future?
For her to do what she needs to do. Her health should come first, schooling second, but they should be pretty close, tie up there, right? I'd like to see her have a career, move out. But she can always come back if she wants to for a little bit. I like for her to like live her dreams and travel and do everything that she wants to do and everything that anybody deserves to do.
Right.
Enjoy it. She's going to have some setbacks. Everybody does. But as long as she's on top of it and can overcome it and just have strength, because sometimes some of the setbacks are going to be harder than others.
Right.
And not health related, but life throws you a lot of curveballs that you're just not prepared for. And, being surrounded by the right people, making good decisions, watching her drinking, just knowing what's going on out there, all that good stuff, just making good decisions. I'd like to see her settle down if she wants to and get married and have a family and get a pug.
Wait a minute. Did you say get a pug?
Yes.
We have a pug.
You really?
We have a black pug. His name is Carl.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Carl the pug. You can check him out on Instagram. He's got like 3,000 followers on Instagram. Carl the pug. Check him out. Anyhow, when you said pug, I was like, wait a minute. Did you say pug? Anyhow. So basically, Tracey, you want the same thing everybody wants for their kids. And that's why I loved it. I like how you said it like that. You just want the same things everybody has. It's not a different experience. There's a little fear, I'm sure, with, different outcomes of not knowing how things will progress or digress or things like that. But you want the same things, the same hope, same aspirations as any parent wants for their children. That's great. That's great. So as we wrap things up a little bit, the question that we ask everybody at the very end, and I want both of you guys to answer this separately, and I'll start with you first, Tracey, is what bit of hope and encouragement could you offer to somebody who is going through this, who has been through it, who is like up in it right now? I mean, think about those early baby times, what that was like hearing that and just living that out. What kind of hope would you offer?
There's so much out there. There's so many new medicines. There's so much research going on right now. And, if you need to contact your local government and make sure that, everything's being passed the way that it should be, and utilize your secondary insurance if you have that. The state of Pennsylvania has a great secondary insurance that helps pay for all of this stuff. It can be very expensive. Don't skip your appointments. If the doctor says come back every 6 weeks, it's not an inconvenience. It's just one day out of 6 weeks that could really make a difference in your child's health. And stay on top of them, but allow them to explore their freedom. Allow them to make some mistakes and know that they're making them, but guide them back as much as you can, but let them find their own mistakes, because finding their own mistakes makes them more aware.
Yeah. No, I think that is perfect. And what about you, Quinn? As a person who's going through it and living it out every day, what kind of hope could you give to someone who's going through it, growing up like this and living it?
That it sucks, but it's worth it. And there's, everything happens for a reason. And just that you have to do what you have to do. And just, I feel like I'm rambling.
No, you're doing fine.
Just do what you need to do. It really sucks, but it's happening for a reason. They have all these new medicines, and everybody's working with you. Even your friends, your family, doctors and stuff. So
I think it's important too to reach out for help. Like, going back, accept the help. But, as a parent, and I'm not a perfect parent, but you recognize things in your child that's not going right. Grades are suffering, staying in their dark room, staying on their phone and not coming out, and, knowing that something was off, and recognizing that. And she, forcing her to go talk to somebody, forcing her to get on some type of medications to make her feel human again. And that's okay. And, people that are struggling every day with a disease, or struggling every day with their body image, whatever, I think it's really important for people to recognize and to know that there's help out there for that too.
That's great. And what I loved what you said, Quinn, is that you just owned it. It sucks. It's not like sugar-coated, hey, everything will be okay. I think it's okay for people who are going through whatever just to own that moment and like sit in it and feel it and like, this sucks right now. It really does.
Yeah.
But I do have hope, and I am going to keep pushing. I am going to keep doing what I need to do to be healthy and growing and get stronger. So thank you for sharing that and just being brutally honest. That's what people want to hear, and it's what they need to hear, is that honesty. In you doing that really helps other people feel normal. It really does. So thank you for sharing that. That was awesome. Well, guys, thank you both for being on the show today. It was amazing, and I can't tell you how much importance it is in sharing your story and helping people. So Quinn or Tracey or both, if there's anybody who wants to get a hold of you guys after they hear your show, how can they connect with you?
You can connect with me on Facebook if they are interested. They can always send me a message.
All right.
Tracey and Anlauf, yeah.
All right, then I will do that. Well, I'll put that in our show notes when this podcast goes live, so everyone has a chance to get a hold of you, because you guys have made an impact already. Like, just hearing your story is very inspirational. It is, and it's really going to help people. So thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm so thankful that Tracey and Quinn came on the show today to share their story about Quinn's battle with cystic fibrosis and Tracey's battle of being a parent, going through that, of being a new parent, being your first baby, and being dealt that hand very early on, and what it was like. Like, the struggle was real. It was fun hearing Tracey and Quinn kind of play off each other a little bit, and they did. They are really funny, and they did bring us laughs in different parts of the story. But a lot of it, was pretty intense. A lot of them growing up and all the stuff that Tracey and her husband had to go through as parents, dealing with something so new like this, and trying to not just raise a first-time baby, but first-time baby with cystic fibrosis, and what it was like with all the treatments and, and the constant pounding of the back or the chest to loosen them up so they can breathe and get some of the mucus out. What it was like early on was quite a struggle for them. And it was great to see as the story evolved, as Quinn got older, what it was like for her sharing that experience and the vulnerability of coming on just out of high school, getting ready to go to college, which is absolutely amazing, and how exciting that must be and nerve-wracking, as you heard from Tracey mention. But what a great milestone in her life and what she's going to do in the future. So what I like to do often, what I've done in the past, is if I have an opportunity, I like to go on the internet, do a little research on maybe some of the stats about something we talked about. And one of the things I read about the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation is they say in the registry they have more than 30,000 people are living with cystic fibrosis and more than 70,000 people worldwide, which is a lot of people. They say approximately 1,000 new cases of CF are diagnosed each year. More than 75% of the people with CF are diagnosed by age 2. And the thing that stood out to me, and after hearing Tracey and Quinn talk, and especially Tracey being the mom, is that more than half of the CF population is age 18 or older, which I think is amazing because, you heard the doctors say that they feel like they're going to see a cure for this in her lifetime, and that people are now living longer lives. They have better futures, better hope, because early on, if they talked about this disease in the 50s or so, is that you wouldn't expect your child to see elementary age school to make it that far, and to see that, half of the population now, 18 or older. It doesn't really cap off an age. So I think that's amazing that there is that hope they talked about, that they feel very certain that they're going to see a cure in her lifetime. And how exciting is that? How scary it is to live with it and to know the repercussions can be really serious if not taken care of well and things like that. But the fact that there is hope so close on the horizon and that people are living much longer lives with CF, I think is really great, and such a great feeling, I'm sure, for Tracey and for Quinn to hear those kind of statistics. And I wanted to touch on one of the things that Quinn talked about at the very end when she was kind of recapping her experience at that wilderness camp or adventures camp or whatever they called it, where she didn't have her phone, and she was with all these new people who didn't know anything about her, who didn't know that she had CF, and did not know she needed all these treatments and machines and all these different things that she relies on a daily basis to help her stay alive and stay healthy. And she was nervous because those things make her stand out. And to her, it made her stand out in a negative way. She saw herself as different. And what I wanted to talk about today is that the things that make us different aren't always a bad thing. The things that make us different make us stand out. The things that are unique about us make us stand out. Because she talked about in her story there, once people found out and she talked about that she had cystic fibrosis and she has to use these machines and treatments, people weren't just curious. They were kind of like geeked out about the whole process and thought it very interesting. And so what I wanted to challenge all of us, whatever you're going through in your life, whatever you're up against, whatever you feel like when you're in a room that makes you different and you think that, I don't know how to really put myself out there. The thing that makes you different is what makes you unique. And I want you to own that difference about you and to own that uniqueness about you, because when you hide that thing that makes you different out about everybody, what you're doing is you're robbing the world of everything that's unique about you for all the people that you can make an impact with, because you are different. And different is not bad. Different is good, because I tell you what, I don't want to be the same as everybody else. I want to be unique. I want to be different. And my differences may not always be the most positive differences, It could be some of the negative things that I've done and had to go through, but yet I have a chance to make an impact with. And that's the same thing with anybody listening today. Think about your differences. The things that you really don't want people to know about sometimes, the things that make you think that you may be rejected socially with friends in a relationship. And to think, are my differences really that bad? Can I own them? Do they make me unique? And the answer is yes. So if you can take anything away from the story, besides all the amazing hope and encouragement that they offered, is to take the things that make you different, the things that are hard about your life sometimes, and make that unique about you, and to use that to spread that love and encouragement and hope for people around you in that circle in your life. And I promise, when you start doing that, boy, will it fill your bucket, and you'll see the difference that you can make in people's lives. And that leads me to the last thing, is that your story matters. I say it every episode after episode after episode. To share your story, even if it's not on this podcast, share it with people in your life, with friends, with family, with coworkers. Whatever it is that you're going through, share that with somebody, because your story is so, so important and has a chance to make a huge impact in someone else's life. Do not rob the world of that because of your fear that your story may not be as good as someone else's. Well, guys, like always, I wanted to thank you so much for tuning in today and checking out the podcast and learning a little bit about Tracey and Quinn's life and what it was like to be raised with cystic fibrosis and all the things they went through. We want to hear from you. Please reach out to me at tim@unwrittenlifepodcast.com. Share your comments about the show. Share some of your story. I'd be happy to read it on the air if it's not something you're comfortable with. Also, check us out on Facebook, on our Unwritten Life podcast group. There's a lot of conversation going on during the week there, and we would love to have you part of the group. And also on Instagram at Unwritten Life Podcast. This is where I share a lot of photos of the people who are on the show. And you can go to unwrittenlifepodcast.com where the show notes are, and that's ways to contact some of the people that have been on our show before. Like I say on a lot of the shows, this is about you guys. It's about building this community. And this podcast is nothing without you guys. It's just a guy in his basement rambling on and sharing stories. But you guys have taken it and given it a heartbeat and make it so people can really latch onto that and to really feel that hope that's out there for everybody. So guys, we've come to the end of yet another episode. But again, this is not the end of your journey at all. Remember, you matter. You can make a difference. And your story is still unwritten.